Okay, so now we're going to do some practice with your stem changing verbs in the preterit. So first off, we've got ayer en el restaurante Roberto dormir pedir una sopa. So dormir is to sleep and pedir is to ask for. So it makes most sense that you would be asking for soup, not sleeping soup. Okay, and who is the subject of your sentence? Who's going to be asking for the soup? Remember that when it's a statement, you're typically going to find your subject before your verb. So the person who's asking for this soup is Roberto. Okay, and pedir happens to be an E to I stem changer. And so that means it stems when you conjugate it could either look like ped or it could look like peed. And it's going to look like peed only if the subject of your sentence is usted, él, ella, or ustedes, ellos, ellas. Okay. So therefore, if it's Roberto who's asking for the soup, Roberto is the same thing as saying he or él. Él is one of those that's in red. So that, I'm sorry, in yellow here. So we're going to use the PID form for a verb. And then pedir is an IR verb, so I'm looking here. So if I go Elia over to IR, it's IO. So I would say pidió. Roberto pidió una sopa. Here, el camarero nos servía repetir la sopa antes de servirnos la ensalada. Camarero is a waiter, okay? So do waiters repeat or serve soup? Probably serve, makes most sense. So I'm going to circle servir. And then if you look here, you do see this nos, but these you either conjugate for a proper noun or for a subject pronoun. These guys right here are your subject pronouns. These are the only pronouns that you conjugate for. Nos is not one of them. It's not a subject pronoun. It's not who's doing the serving. It's who's being served. In this case, it's an indirect object pronoun, but nos can be either an indirect object pronoun or a flexive pronoun or a direct object pronoun, but it's not a subject pronoun. These guys, the ones you learned when you first started taking Spanish, these are your subject pronouns. These are for whom you conjugate. Subject pronouns for whom or for what you conjugate your verb. Okay, so we've got servir, who's doing the serving. That would be the waiter. Okay, and the waiter is the same thing as saying he, because you can either say the waiter serves the soup or he serves the soup, right? And servir is an E to I stem changer. That means that its stems are either serve or sirve, and it's only, sirve, and it's only going to be sirve. It's only going to be sirve when the subject of your sentence is either usted, él, ella, or ustedes, ellos, ellas. Since the subject of our sentence is él, we are going to use sirve. So I'm going to put sirve. And then the ending that I would use, if it's L, this is an IR verb. I'm going to go over to my IR column for L, and it's an IO. Sirvió. Whoops. Sirvió. Okay. Which I think all of these, because we're talking about stem changers, they're all IR, so I'm actually going to fix your chart really quickly so we don't even have to worry about the ERs. Okay. All right, so down here, yo repetir dormir 8 horas anoche. What am I going to be doing for 8 hours last night? Probably not repeating, more than likely sleeping, because that's what we're supposed to get. Doesn't always happen. Okay, so dormir is an O to U stem changer in the preterit. That means its stems are either dorm or dorm, and it's only going to be dorm with the U when the subject of your sentence is either él, ella, usted, or ellos, ellas, ustedes, like I've blocked out over here. And the subject of your sentence, the person who's doing the sleeping, is I, because I'm going to look before the blank where my verb is supposed to go if it's a statement, and this is a statement. And so then I'm going to put, all right, so now my choice is, if my subject is yo, I use dorm, not dorm. And then for yo, it's an I. Yo dormí. Okay, los estudiantes repetir, servir el vocabulario en la clase de español. Repetir is to repeat, servir is to serve. Makes most sense if we're talking about vocabulary that we're going to repeat it. Repetir. Repetir is an E to I stem changer in the preterit, which would make it stem repet or repeat. Okay, and we are going to use the repeat spelling of it only when the subject of our sentence is usted, el, ella, or ustedes, ellos, ellas. And the subject of our sentence, the people who are repeating this vocabulary, happen to be the students. Okay, so in order to use our chart, I have to think of my students. What pronoun could I use to replace students? It would be they, ellos. Ellos is one of the ones that falls in yellow. So when I'm putting in my answer, I'm going to want to use repeat instead of repet. And then for ellos, it's hicieron, repitieron. Okay. Tu no sentir, seguir las instrucciones de la receta. Sentir is to feel, and seguir is to follow. So it's not that you didn't feel the instructions, but you didn't follow the instructions, which is seguir. Seguir happens to be an E to I stem changer in the preterit. So that would make it stem seg or sieg. Okay. Sorry with the U. Okay. And the subject of my sentence, this time the person who didn't follow the directions was tu. Tu is not in my yellow box, so I'm going to use the regular stem. I'm not going to make my spelling change. And then the ending that I have for tu, if I go over here, here's tu, is I-S-T-E, seguiste. Okay, so tú no seguiste las instrucciones de la receta. Mis hijos dormir, preferir toda la noche. They, more than likely, they slept all night, dormir. Okay, and dormir is an O to use stem changer. That means that its stem can be dorm or dorm, depending on who the subject of your sentence is. The people who are doing the sleeping are my kids, mis hijos, whoops, which is the same thing as ellos. Okay, ellos does fall in the red box. So when I put in my answer, I'm going to use the dorm stem. And then for ellos, it's where's my mouse? So you can see it. It's I-E-R-O-N. So durmieron. Okay. Nosotros pedir, sentir langosta y una botella de vino tinto en el restaurante. Pedir is to ask for, and sentir is to feel. Makes more sense that you'd be asking for lobster and red wine rather than feeling those two things. Okay, so we're going to use pedir. Pedir is an E to I stem changer. Whoops, E to I stem changer. Why is it doing that? Okay, it's an E to I stem changer in the preterit tense, which would make its stem either ped or ped. You're only going to use, I didn't do this for a bunch of them. You're only going to use the stem change, the ped, if the subject of your sentence is either usted el Elia or ustedes ellos ellas. Well, the person who is asking for this bottle of wine and lobster, the people are nosotros. Nosotros does not fall in the yellow box, so I would use the ped form. So nosotros pe, and then the ending that I would add is IMOS, pedimos. Okay. Pedí una ensalada, pero mi esposo preferir comer algo más fuerte y pidió un bistec. So I asked for salad, and my husband, either he followed or he preferred to eat. I think preferred makes more sense. He preferred to eat something stronger. So we're going to pick preferir. Preferir is an E to I stem changer in the preterit tense. So that would mean that its stem is either prefer or prefier. Okay, and we are going to use, okay, and we are going to use the stem change, the IR, the prefer over prefer, only if your subject falls in one of these yellow boxes. The person who asked for this salad was my husband. Okay, and that would be the same thing as saying he. Okay, L does fall in the box, so I'm going to use prefier, and then for he it's yo, prefirió. Okay, pedí una ensalada, pero mi esposo prefirió comer algo más fuerte. Los estudiantes seguir, sentir todas las instrucciones y salieron bien en el examen. Makes most sense that they followed, not that they felt the instructions. And seguir is an E to I stem changer in the preterit. So that means its root could either be sig or sig. Okay, and my subject, and you're only going to use the sig with an I if your subject falls in the yellow box. The subject of this sentence, the people who were following the instructions, were